Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on giant billboards across the metro. Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on buses across the city. Now get to know Joumana Kayrouz.
The war broke out in my home country, Lebanon. I was 11 years old, and I saw a lot of bloodshed and inequality and poverty. You can't grow up in an environment like that and not be affected by it and not want to make a difference. I graduated from Yale University with a master's in ethics. I speak 4 languages. It has always been innate in me fighting for the underdog and trying to do whatever it is I can to make a difference in the world.
Let Joumana Kayrouz protect your rights. Call the law offices of Joumana Kayrouz at 1-866-YOUR-RIGHTS, extension 100, or visit yourrights.com.
برنامج يور رايتس مع المحامية جومانا كيروز المختصة في قضايا حوادث السيارات مع نخبة من المحامين في اختصاصات عدة منها الطلاق والهجرة والإفلاس يأتيكم الآن على الهواء مباشرة. تحية طيبة لكم مستمعينا، أهلا وسهلا فيكم في حلقة جديدة من برنامج يور رايت مع المحامية جومانا كيروز. وموضوع الحلقة اليوم عن قضايا الإفلاس مع المحامي مايكل بنكستين، أيضا هو من ضمن مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز اللي تستقبل قضاياكم العديدة والمتنوعة، منها قضايا البيرسونال انجري، قضايا حوادث السيارات، قضايا الهجرة والتجنس، قضايا الإفلاس، الكريمنال لو، فاميلي لو، قضايا أيضا الضمان الاجتماعي وإصابات العمل. الاستشارات مجانية، بإمكانكم الاتصال على رقم 248-557-3645 للمشاركة على الهواء مباشرة 313-769-6666 519-256-1023، وأيضا عن طريق الواتساب 313-327-7074. ولا ننسى هذا البرنامج يعاد وهذه الحلقات تعاد مرة أخرى على الموقع الإلكتروني yourrights.com/radio، وعلى اليوتيوب كل ما عليكم البحث عن قناة جومانا كيروز.
Hi, I'm Michael Bengstein, the managing attorney of the bankruptcy department at the law offices of Joumana Kayrouz. Did you know that if you co-sign for someone else's vehicle and they don't pay, you could be sued, your wages could be garnished, or you could even have your driver license suspended? If you're facing a situation like this, bankruptcy may be the solution for you. Give us a call today at 866-YOUR-RIGHTS for a free consultation.
واحدة من التسجيلات ومقاطع الفيديو اللي مكتبكم جومانا دائما حريص انه يقدمها للمستمعين وللمتابعين واللي يزورون موقعكم ايضا، دائما نصائح تبس عن كل القضايا ومن ضمنها موضوع اليوم عن الإفلاس.
نعم مظبوط. صباح الخير رامي، صباح الخير لكل المستمعين، صباح الخير للمحامي مايكل بنكستين.
Hello, Michael.
Hi, Rami.
How are you today?
I'm great. How are you guys doing today?
Very good. Thank you for this latest clip that you have taped about pinpointing the dangers of co-signing. About 2 weeks ago, we did talk about co-signing. Susie Orman, one of the financial experts that we have been talking about in the past, did say there are 3 things you must never do. And one of those 3 things was about co-signing. And you know how we always say, Michael, don't use the word never and don't use the word always, because there is no such thing as never and there is no such thing as always.
That's so true.
Susie Orman says, never, ever, ever, ever co-sign. Correct? And before I have you comment on that, I would like to say it's very hard to tell our people who are always wanting to help others and who are always wanting to help newcomers. And that's really, those are the ones who do get the help as far as finding someone who need the help, finding someone to co-sign for them. I would add, I wouldn't say never, but I would say you can do it if the following conditions are met. We'll talk about that again in a minute, but allow me to remind the listeners that we know when it comes to bankruptcy, criminal law, family law in particular, a number of reasons, a number of people do not like to call on the air. So you can call us via WhatsApp and you can leave us a written message or a voice message and Rami will pick it up. That number is 313-327-7074. 313-327-7074. لأي شخص ما بيريد يتكلم على الهوا بس بيحب يوصلنا سؤال أو تعليق بيقدر يبعث لنا مسج على الواتساب. رامي موجود باستوديو لحتى يوصلنا المسج، يوصلنا السؤال على الرقم 313-327-7074. So, Susie Orman says, never ever co-sign for someone. What does Michael Bankstein say?
I say if you're going to do that, think very carefully about what you know about that person. Do they seem responsible? Do they seem like they do what they say they will do? Because just understand that if they don't pay, you will be called upon to do so.
All right. So if you co-sign for someone and they fall behind for whatever reason or default, do know it is your debt. Get it in your head that when you're co-signing for someone, really it is your debt. At the end of the day, it is your debt. The problem with co-signing, if you rely on the person for whom you co-signed to make the payments and make them on time, it will be too late before you find out that that person did not make a payment or did not make it on time. By then, your credit may be affected. That is the problem. That is why what I say this because I am Middle Eastern and I understand the Middle Eastern culture. I understand that a lot of people very lovingly want to help others, especially newcomers, people who come to this country. They need to get a car, they need to get loans, but they have not built their credit score yet. They don't have a credit at all. So it's very, very, very hard to get anyone to give them anything. And so they turn to friends, they turn to relatives to help them. And one of the ways relatives and friends have helped each other is by co-signing for somebody new to this country until that person has been here long enough and engaged in enough financial transactions in a responsible manner to build a credit and a good credit. And so what I say, I understand that even if we tell people don't ever, 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 there will be people who will do it. They come from a very good place and a very loving place. And, they are to be commended for that. But, as the holy books say, love your neighbor as yourself, not more than yourself. You need to protect yourself as a co-signer. I say, let the co-signer make the payment and then take that payment from the co-signee. That's the only way that the co-signer is not going to default. Yes, it's an extra step, but that's the only way me as a co-signer will make sure that you as a co-signee are not putting me in harm's way. You're not ruining my credit, is by me making the payment on your behalf, making it on time, and then I go to you every month and I say, Michael, will you please pay me back?
I can't tell you, Joumana, how many times I've had someone come into our office and they're in bankruptcy not because of their own financial activities, but because they've been so generous with others. I've co-signed on this person's apartment. I've co-signed on that person's vehicle, and then they don't pay, and then now you've got a $20,000 bill.
A price for somebody else's financial mistake or omission.
That's correct.
Okay. You talked in the clip about how some people who co-sign may end up needing to file bankruptcy. Can you give us a real life situation, a case in our office that's come to us, obviously without saying enough that anybody would know who we're talking about a situation where co-signing led that person to land in our office wanting to file bankruptcy?
Oh, I can think very specifically about one not that long ago. She co-signed on someone's vehicle. She wasn't on the title to the vehicle, but she was a co-signer on the debt for the vehicle. Okay, so the person who's driving the vehicle around stopped paying the insurance.
So let me make sure I understand. Somebody bought a car. The title is on that person. However, they get a loan to pay the car. They own the car. To get a loan to pay the car, they got a co-signer on the loan.
That's right.
So the lady co-signed for the loan, but she is not on the title.
That's correct.
Okay.
So then the person who's driving it around doesn't have insurance, gets in a car accident. The vehicle's very badly damaged, And so the insurance isn't paying off the note. So the note, people, the car financer, they don't care where the money's coming from, but they want their money. So they
But the car is gone.
But
So
the
you're
car's gone.
paying on a car that is gone.
Correct.
Okay.
Then they sued her, and they got a judgment.
They sued her because she is a co-signer on the loan.
Correct.
So this is her debt.
Yes.
She thinks it's not her debt because she's helping somebody and she's not using the car.
I guarantee you
But
it is her
legally
debt.
speaking, it is her debt just as much as it is his debt.
Yes. And so as soon as they get a judgment, they can intercept your state tax refund. They can hit
So
them.
they sued her and got a judgment? Sorry
They
to
did.
interrupt. They got a
They did.
judgment?
Yeah.
For how much?
I don't remember the exact amount, but it was somewhere around $23,000.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so she is on the hook for a car that has been destroyed in an accident because she co-signed on the loan.
But wait, there's more.
That sounds like a commercial on television, but wait, there is more.
I couldn't resist.
If you pay within the next 30 seconds, we'll throw in 4 more.
Well, they weren't able to garnish her wages. I think she's on a fixed income, if I recall correctly. So, they weren't able to really hit her bank account or garnish her wages or anything like that. But because there's an unpaid judgment, they were able to go to the Secretary of State's office and get the Secretary of State to suspend her driver license for non-payment of a judgment.
So are you telling me that any unpaid judgment will automatically, the person to whom the judgment is owed can take it to the Secretary of State, resulting in, or does it have to be any judgment?
It's generally not their first move, because their first move is they'll garnish your wages or try to hit your bank account. But if they're having some trouble
Yeah,
getting the
because
money,
it doesn't help them to suspend your driver's license. They
Right.
want money.
that's pretty much a
Understood.
that's pretty much a last resort. But they do that. And oftentimes a person does find a way to pay something if their driver license is at stake.
So is it the law that any unpaid judgment can expose you to a suspended driver's license?
Yes, they can request that the Secretary of State's office suspend that license.
So this young lady who was doing such a good thing by co-signing on the loan finds herself sued and unable to pay $22,000 remaining to a bank on a car that has been destroyed and gone. She does not work. She had no money in her bank account, so they couldn't garnish up to 25% of her wages and what have you. And now there is a judgment against her for $22,000, an order from the court to pay that she could not pay. So they went to the Secretary of State to suspend her driver's license, and her driver's license was suspended.
Correct.
And why did she consult with you? She wanted to file bankruptcy?
Yes, one of the things that a bankruptcy will do for you is if the driver license was suspended for non-payment of a judgment of that type, filing for bankruptcy is going to eliminate that judgment. So the whole point of getting the driver license suspended was non-payment of the judgment. But the filing of the bankruptcy will mean that provided that you get to the end and you get your discharge of the debt, as a matter of law, the debt no longer exists. So the Secretary of State's office will restore your driver license. If it was suspended for that reason, that's not going to help you if it's drunk driving or over your points or anything like that. But if the driver license was suspended for non-payment of a judgment, if the judgment's dischargeable, then as soon as you file the bankruptcy, you give the notice of the Chapter 7 case filing to the Secretary of State's office, and they will restore your license.
I think you just shared with us just beyond amazing information. So I want to take all the time needed to explain this in Arabic. من أسبوعين حكينا عن مخاطر الكوسايننج، حكينا أنه أي إنسان بحب يساعد الآخر وعم يعمل شغلة جيدة، بالأخص للآخر اللي بعده جاي على البلد اللي ما عنده كريدت، هذا الشخص بحاجة لمساعدة. ففي أشخاص بالجالية بعضهم بحبوا يساعدوا بعضهم البعض ويعملوا كوسايننج. لأي إنسان مصر، الاختصاصية سوزي أورمان بتقول never ever cosign. أنا حتى المحامي مايكل بانكستين ويمكن كتير مستمعين بيقولوا مش never ever. فينا نقدر نساعد بس لازم نحمي حالنا. للإنسان اللي بيعمل كوسايننج يحط براسه أنه هذا الدين هو دينه، يعني بالنهاية إذا الشخص اللي حاول يساعده عجز عن الدفع لسبب أو لآخر، يحط براسه أنه هذا الدين دينه ولازم يكون مستعد معنويا وأكثر ماديا أنه يرد الدين. إذا مش قادر ومستعد يرد الدين أحسن أنه ما يمضي كوسايننج. إذا كانت شغلة بسيطة وبدنا نعمل عليها كوسايننج، أنا رأيي إنه الشخص اللي بيكون كوساينور، يعني إذا أنا عم ساعد شخص تاني مفروض أنا أدفع البيمنت وأرجع استرده من الشخص التاني، لأنه إذا اتكلت على الشخص التاني وإذا الشخص التاني لسبب أو لآخر تأخر عن الدفع أو عجز عن الدفع، بدها تاخد أسابيع قبل ما أنا أعرف إنه عجز أو تأخر والكريدت سكور تبعي رح يتأثر. وذا فيرست ريزن ليش أنا قدرت أكون كوساينر لأنه الكريدت سكور تبعي جيد، يعني الكريدت سكور تبعي بيتعطل. رح نعطي اكزامبل تاني عن مخاطر الكوسايننج، وعن جد ممكن حسب قديه المبلغ وشو وضع الكوساينر. الكوساينر بيكون عنده جود كريدت بس ما معناتها انه صحته الاقتصادية جيدة لدرجة انه اذا صار في تقصير من قبل الطرف الاخر بيقدر يمتص الدين كله. مثلا السيدة اللي اجت لعنا اللي did a very good thing واللي عم بتواجه هلا خسرت الدرايفرز لايسنس تبعها واضطرت تقدم بانكربسي لانه واجهت لون قيمتها 22,000. هيدي السيدة عم بتقدم bankruptcy for the financial mistake of somebody else. هيدي السيدة اللي بلشت بمحبتها وبحبها للمساعدة عم تدفع ثمن كتير كبير، قشطوها السكرتاري اوف ستيت الدرايفرز لايسنس تبعها وهلا عم بتقدم bankruptcy. لمي explain. السيدة حبت تساعد صديق لسبب او لاخر، الكريدت سكور تبعه يمكن واطي او بعده جاي جديد على البلد، اشترى سيارة، اللون تبع السيارة القرض من البنك اسمه واسمه، لأنه لو بيقدر هو كان أخده هو، كان بحاجة إلها. يعني القرض باسم الاثنين، عملت كوسايننج على اللون $22,000 أو يمكن أكتر من 22. وإنما بيجي نهار بيتعرض هذا الشخص لحادث سيارة، السيارة تبعه بتتعطل، ثاقبت انه ما عنده انشورنس على السيارة، يعني مخالف القانون وعم يمشي بلا انشورنس. ما في مشكل من هاي الناحية، بس لو كان عنده انشورنس ولو كان عنده كوليجن كفرج، بده يكون عنده الاثنين، لو كان عنده انشورنس وكان عنده كوليجن كفرج، على الاقل كانت الكار انشورنس كمباني ردت له قيمة السيارة اللي بدها تكون اقل من 22,000 بس بتكون شيء اللي هو افضل من لا شيء. بس ثاقبت هيدا الشخص ما عنده انشورنس، او يمكن تثاقب شخص تاني عنده انشورنس بس شاري انشورنس بسيطة على قده، مش شاري كوليجن كفرج، يعني بحال تعرض لها ضربة السيارة على القليلة الانشورنس كمباني بترد له قيمة السيارة. خلاصة الأمر بعد بدل البنك منه ومنا $22,000. نتذكر انه قلنا الدين هو مش دينه فقط، هو دينه هي، يعني مثل اثنين على كريدت كارد، اثنيناتهم مسؤوليتهم هي ذاتها. هون ذات الشيء هذا الشخص طبعا doesn't have so much at stake، مش عجز انه يدفع $22,000، ليه حقوها هي، قاموا دعوة ضدها طبعا $22,000. البنك عجزت عن الدفع، ما قدروا يعملوا جارنشمنت على الراتب تبعها، يعني ياخدوا جزء من الراتب تبعها. القانون بيقول انه اي انسان عنده امر للدفع تجاهه، بيقدر صاحب الأمر صاحب الجادجمنت ياخده لرب العمل، وبيقدر رب العمل يخصم 25% من راتب الإنسان ليرده لصاحب الدين. وما عنده مصاري بالبنك أكاونت، ما قدروا يعملوا أي جارنشمنت على البنك أكاونت تبعها وما كانت بتشتغل. راحوا وطبعا كل صاحب دين عمليا بحب يرد مصاري أكثر مما بحب يقاصص. يعني بفضلوا to garnish a bank، بفضلوا to garnish wages، لأنه بدهم جزء من المصاري، على القليل شيء من 22,000. وإنما ما قدروا يحصلوا على ولا مبلغ من 22,000. راحوا على السكرتاري اوف ستيت. القانون بيقول إنه أي إنسان في judgment، يعني في أمر من المحكمة ضده للدفع، وما دفع، بحق إلا السكرتاري اوف ستيت تحجز الدرايفرز لايسنس تبعه. يعني الدرايفرز لايسنس تبعه بتصير سسبندد. يعني هيدي الست الطيبة اللي حاولت تساعد إنسان، صارت بدعوة، نصل الكريدت سكور تبعها لأنه صار في جادجمنت ضدها، وخسرت الدرايفرز لايسنس تبعها. اضطرت تجي لعنا، لأنه حل من الحلول اللي بانكربسي بتقدمها للإنسان اللي في أمر ضده، الجادجمنت ضده مش مدفوع. إذا خسر الدرايفرز لايسنس تبعه، إذا قدمت بانكربسي، بيرجعوا بيردوا لها الدرايفرز لايسنس تبعها، لأنه الدرايفرز لايسنس تبعها is suspended، يعني انحجزت for non-payment of a judgment. إذا you discharge، إذا بتمحي بالبانكربسي الجادجمنت، ما بقى عندهم سبب السكرتاري اوف ستيت يحجزوا driver's license. مثل ما بيقول المحامي مايكل بانكستين، إذا driver's license suspended because of drunk driving أو سبب آخر، يقدم الإنسان بانكربسي ما له أي تأثير على استعادة الدرايفرز لايسنس. بس إذا الدرايفرز لايسنس سببها محجوزة لأنه في بيمنت مادي غير مدفوع، الحل هو البانكربسي، لأنه البانكربسي بتمحي الدين. ما بقى عندهم ساعتها السبب السكرتاري اوف ستيت يحجزوا الدرايفرز لايسنس، بيرجعوا بيردوا له the driver's license. So the basis for the suspension doesn't exist anymore. The non-payment, because it's going to be discharged in bankruptcy. So مسيرة هالست اللي حبت تعمل خير، اللي حبت تساعد، هيدي الست هون أنا نصيحتي لازم تسأل حالها نهار اللي حبت تساعد، worst case scenario، أسوأ ما يصير إذا هذا الشخص عجز لسبب أو لآخر، توفى لا سمح الله. في أشياء in our control وفي أشياء منا in our control. إذا هذا الإنسان عجز عن الدفع، هل عند القدرة المادية تدفع هذا المبلغ كله اللي هو 22,000 نهار الحادث، اللي يمكن كان 25,000 نهار اللي أخذوا السيارة؟ إذا الجواب هو نو، لازم الإنسان stop. بيقولوا if بيسألوك أسئلة sometimes online، بيسألونا أسئلة if no don't continue، if yes then go to the next step. يمكن السؤال هو هل عنا القدرة نهار اللي عم نفكر نمضي worst case scenario، إذا أسوأ ما بيصير إنه هذاك الإنسان التاني عجز لنقول وفاة، هل عندي القدرة أنا أتحمل الدفعة كلها؟ إذا الجواب هو no، we should stop right there وما لازم نعمل co-signing. I think Attorney Michael Bernstein, this was a very powerful example of the dangers of co-signing, because sometimes things happen outside of anybody's control, not even the other person's control. What if the other person died? You know, that person is not there. And so who is stuck with the whole amount? The co-signor. So that's why Susie Orman says never ever. And Susie Orman says it is your debt. So I say the day you are tempted to co-sign, look at the amount. If that amount is not something you can ever afford, or you can afford, or you think you can afford, stop right there. If this beautiful lady who meant so well, whose intentions are so good to help someone else, she ended up loving him more than herself. You know, we should have loved him just as much as herself, not more. Not realizing the dangers, the legal consequences. I'm sure this young lady does not know that should there be a time where this is her debt and she cannot pay, there will be a judgment and they can suspend her driver's license. That's her freedom. That's her ability to make a living. So I say if this young lady looked on the day she decided to co-sign and said, wait, let's say the car loan was $25,000 on the day of the signing. I cannot afford $25,000. What if he dies tomorrow? I'm stuck with the $25,000. Then maybe she would have decided, I'm not doing this. I'm not.
I agree. Everything is fine until it isn't. So I'm not prepared to say never, but it's definitely something to be considered carefully for sure.
So, knowledge, is potential power. Applied knowledge is power. We have a lot. We live in a world of knowledge. The information is readily available at your tip, but if you don't apply it, then it's not powerful to you. A lot of people who decide to co-sign, they don't see the whole landscape. It's hard for them. How many people do know that if they're unable to pay the loan for which they co-signed, their driver's license will be suspended? I will bet you maybe 1 out of every 50 people do know that. And so the solution, and I love what you said last time about bankruptcy. We do not want anyone to file bankruptcy who can avoid filing bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is, why? Because, when you file bankruptcy, you cannot file for another 10 years. 10 years is it, or 7 years? Sorry.
It's 8 years for a Chapter 7. Although there's another chapter that I've had people come in who filed a Chapter 7 less than 8 years ago. So long as at least 4 years have passed from the filing of the Chapter 7, you could file a Chapter 13. But 13 is different. You are paying something back to your creditors over some period of time, as opposed to the 7 where you're just wiping out the debt.
Right. So although we do not want anyone to file bankruptcy who can avoid filing bankruptcy, because again, you cannot do it for another 8 years, at least if it is Chapter 7, your credit score is going to go down, it's going to limit your options. Yes, although we don't want anybody to file bankruptcy if they can avoid doing so. Bankruptcy has been branded a villain and a bad thing, and it is not. You said a week ago on September 17, you said, bankruptcy is like the tow truck that pulls your car out of the ditch. Bankruptcy is not the ditch. You've already created a ditch, or you fell into a ditch. Bankruptcy is that tow truck that's pulling you out of the ditch. The bad stuff has already happened in the past, and you promise you're going to turn this into a small commercial.
Oh, exactly, because bankruptcy isn't the problem. Bankruptcy can sometimes be the right solution to the problem.
So applying this to this lady, the problem was her naively co-signing on a loan that she could not afford because it's her debt. Susie Ormond says it's her debt. It's her debt. And that judgment against her proves it was her debt. So the problem, the bad stuff that happened with her isn't the bankruptcy. Actually, it's her co-signing on a loan that she could not afford, not today, not in the future. Bankruptcy is the tow truck and she fell in a ditch. She fell in the ditch of a judgment against her. She fell in the ditch of her driver's license being suspended. And bankruptcy comes and is the tow truck that's pulling her out of that ditch of suspended driver's license and $23,000 judgment hanging over her head. Bankruptcy will wipe out that judgment. Bankruptcy will restore her driver's license, because the reason for which her driver's license was suspended is a money thing that is getting discharged in bankruptcy, not to confuse with, a driver's license that's suspended for drunk driving or something else.
Yeah, that's statutory
fines.
Those statutory suspensions, the bankruptcy isn't going to do anything for that.
Say that again?
Those statutory suspensions, like you're over your points or drunk driving, that's not going to shorten that period of time at all for bankruptcy. It's strictly just, if the license was suspended because of non-payment of a judgment. So it's not a fix-all, but it'll fix oftentimes the reason why somebody's having to go into bankruptcy. To use a medical analogy, nobody likes to have a surgery if they can avoid it, but if that appendix has to come out, you better get it out for sure.
So the surgeon is not the villain.
Exactly.
Okay, the surgeon is the tow truck that fixes that appendix.
Uh-oh, now we're mixing metaphors.
Okay. And I can't help it, but I want to read this review from a lady by the name of Sarah. We will withhold her. I mean, it's public, but we will hold her last name. I highly recommend going to them for any of your bankruptcy needs. They are very friendly and professional. Michael Bankstein made the seemingly scary process super easy and painless. He takes his time in explaining the process to you and is very open to answering any questions you may have. He has years of experience and it shows, exclamation point. I'm glad I chose to go with him and his team.
Wow, I hadn't
Did you
seen
pay
that
this
one.
lady?
No, I hadn't seen that one,
Take
but
a
I'm
look.
really happy
This
that.
was posted on September 21, 3 days ago.
Nice.
Yes. Did you pay this lady to write all these good things about
No,
you?
not
or
at
my,
all.
Or my date? He very seriously answers, not at all.
I couldn't put it as eloquently as they do because
Is it unethical to pay this
they're
lady?
really feeling it.
Isn't it unethical?
I don't want to find out. You know
It is
what?
unethical.
If
Otherwise, we'll buy 500 reviews.
the best review is a review that comes from the heart. And I say, if somebody wants to make a review, I say, just tell me what you thought about our services. Tell
No
me what your
pressure.
experience was.
No
and
pressure.
if you don't want to, you don't have to. But
Of
just
course.
it's helpful sometimes for people who are possibly facing that situation again to hear what your thoughts were, having actually been through the process.
So on a very serious note, this review really touched my heart and our team responded to her. On a very serious note, it is a very scary process. And until I started learning about bankruptcy from you, and thanks to you, I too was very intimidated by the process, and I too did not think very highly of bankruptcy. You're helping me and hopefully listeners change their outlook, their mindset about what bankruptcy is. Again, it ought to be a last resort, but it will be the savior when it is a last resort and it's needed. It will be like the surgeon taking the appendix out. It will be like the tow truck getting your car out of a ditch.
Thank you so much.
And the consequences, the negative, adverse consequences of going into bankruptcy are more short-term. Hopefully, applying for bankruptcy and assuming that it happened without things being outside of people's control, like, they're not insured and they find themselves with large medical bills or they lost their job. But hopefully it is a time for reflection as to what can we do different next time so that we don't have to face bankruptcy the second time around.
I agree. And, there's this misconception that people are taking the quote-unquote easy way out by filing for bankruptcy and that they're just, I've met with thousands and thousands of people over a 12-year period. And I have yet to meet that person who supposedly is the typical example of, let's just take the easy way out. And everybody that I talk to, on average, has been fighting this battle on their own for anywhere from 2 to 4 years before they picked up that phone call. People do not do this lightly. Whatever the public imagination might
Sure.
be, people don't do this lightly.
So to their credit and to our listeners' credit and to our clients' credit, a lot of people, they prolong because they are trying to think of a way to solve their financial problems without filing bankruptcy, right?
That's true.
Okay, and sometimes the flip side of that is that sometimes they take too long and they carry that cross on their shoulders, so to speak, for far too long. My advice to anyone listening, and whether it's our office or any other law office, almost every legal consultation in every law office, to my knowledge, is free. Instead of, assuming and thinking that you're not a bankruptcy lawyer, with all due respect. How much can you know? And by talking to your friend and neighbor, how much can you know? I am a lawyer with, I think, 22 years of experience. And until you started teaching me the law, I didn't know, and I still don't know a lot. So how can a lay person think they know? So when people struggle on their own and they do not consult with someone specialized in that area, they may be wrong. I want to go back to give an example of that. Last week, when we had a lady, I believe her name is Fatina, who called on behalf of her son. And, she was struggling with what her son, or what should her son Fatima, who was struggling with what should her son do, Michael. And her son owned a car and had $60,000 in debt. And people told him, maybe you should file for Chapter 13. There is no Chapter 13. She meant Chapter 11. And they said, well, if you file, all you have to do is pay $150 a month for 5 years. Congratulations. She says, is that true? And, well, it wasn't true, but this is an example of how people listen. It's a little bit like the blind leading the blind. People who are advising you, they mean well, but they can only tell you about their understanding of their particular case. And no two cases are the same. No two car accidents are the same. No two bankruptcy cases are the same. It's all different. It's not cookie cutter. If it was cookie cutter, you don't need a lawyer. You can go do it online. There are forms online. You can do it. You don't have to worry and think twice. Save your money for something else. It's not that easy. And again, a caller last week, brought that point home again. So her son should be consulting with an experienced bankruptcy lawyer, whoever it is. And that consultation, to my knowledge, is free. Is that correct? Not in our office. I'm talking about your knowledge of other law firms as well.
Yeah, that's typical. I don't know of any...
And I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead. Continue, please.
I don't know of any bankruptcy office in the district that doesn't give you a free consultation for bankruptcy.
And I want to say that the greatest majority of law firms do free consultations, not because they are kind, but because they know that it makes business sense. That if you sat with them and you went through your consultation, you will get to see for yourself how knowledgeable they are, how competent they are, and if the chemistry is there and if the price is right, then maybe you will hire them. So, it's a business tactic. It's a good business tactic where they are likely. Not everybody will sign up, but the greatest majority of people will sign up, and it's a good return on their time investment. Correct?
Correct. And when someone's on the fence about having a consultation, what I say is, it's always better to know than to not know. It's a free consultation. Whether you hire that attorney or not, it's everything you talk about is confidential under state law. It's always better to know than to not know. And that really hits at the heart of the mission of the firm, is know your rights. I'm going to throw a quick quote in here if we have time.
And I just want to, before you throw in the quote, for those who didn't pick up on what it means, if you're on the fence about, meaning if you're not sure, should you go for a consultation or not go for a consultation? He is saying, it does not cost you any money, and you will only come out more clearer on your financial landscape, on what your option may be. You will only gain more knowledge, and with knowledge comes more peace.
That's true. That's true. It's always better to know than to not know. Know your rights.
Ahead, yeah.
And here's that quote I have from Maya Angelou. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better.
I love it.
It's always better to know than to not know.
It's always better to know and to not know. And to those of us who beat on ourselves because 3 years ago we did what we shouldn't have done and we didn't do what we should have done, I say, and I read it somewhere, is, you do what you can with the knowledge and understanding you have at the time. And when you know better, you ought to do better. And that's exactly what Maya Angelou is saying. Right. I want to remind the listeners, like every Tuesday, we spend an hour talking about bankruptcy, trying to break down bankruptcy for our listeners and educating each other about bankruptcy. The numbers to call, 313-769-6666, from Windsor, 519-256-1023. And those who want to reach out to us anonymously, they can WhatsApp us at 313-327-7074. Attorney Michael Bengstein, I know, but I want you to repeat that. When people come to you and say, I want to file for bankruptcy, do you rubber stamp it and say, all righty, here is one more client, we're going to make this much more money. Isn't that awesome? Is that how you begin your consultation?
No, not at all.
Okay. What do you do?
The way I start is I tell them the 3 things that I do. I explain what each one of those 3 things are, and I explain how there are pluses and minuses to each one of those approaches. And let's look at your situation, your income, your expenses, your assets, your liabilities, what kind of debts you have, what are you looking to do to find the best fit for you, not just because I'm trying to sell X number of Chapter 7s this week or whatever.
You have a quota to make, right?
No, I don't. My quota is to get the best fit for you based on your situation. That's my quota.
And sometimes the best fit for a client is not bankruptcy.
That's correct.
Sometimes reshuffling things or what's called debt relief or debt consolidation may be the solution.
That's correct. That's one of the things I do is debt negotiation. That's not bankruptcy at all. It's a voluntary negotiation of the debt with the creditors. There's pluses and minuses to doing that. There's different facts that are a better fit or not as good of a fit for that, but that's definitely one of the options. The very first thing I say to someone when I meet with them is, the first thing we're going to look at is bankruptcy the best option for you? I'm not afraid to tell you if there's something other than bankruptcy that's a better fit for your situation.
Okay, and out of those who come and consult with our firm, what's the percentage, do you say, who comes into the door thinking that they're going to file bankruptcy, but who walk out knowing that they may renegotiate that debt and avoid bankruptcy?
In most cases, when people walk in, if they know anything about bankruptcy at all, they're trying to be a Chapter 7. And I would say the majority of our cases right now are the Chapter 7, the 6 months or less. Keep all of your belongings, get rid of all the debt. Sometimes people want to be a Chapter 7, but they just don't fit. There's certain criteria for being a Chapter 7, and if you just don't fit, it wouldn't do you any good to file as a Chapter 7 because you'd have the United States Trustee's Office, filing a motion to dismiss.
Okay, and so what's the percentage of people who think that they're going to have to file bankruptcy, but who end up negotiating their debt?
Interestingly enough, I'd say it's probably somewhere around 10 or 15%.
But
most people, bankruptcy is appropriate.
Okay, so 10 to 15% out of every 10 people who come to our firm, there is a 1 or 2 people who, with proper counseling, we can help them avoid filing for bankruptcy, and they enter into what's called debt renegotiation.
That's correct.
Now, debt renegotiation, like bankruptcy, your credit score is going to go down, correct?
That's right.
However, you're not filing for bankruptcy, therefore, at least in theory, leaving it for a darker day, for a worse time in your life, correct?
That's correct. And I've actually had situations where somebody has too much debt, so they don't qualify for a Chapter 7. Maybe they have too much equity in their house, and that affects how much you have to pay in a Chapter 13. So I've actually had people do debt negotiation to get rid of as much of the debt as possible, and you get rid of most of the debt doing that. And then if there's some holdouts that weren't, because it's a voluntary negotiation on the debt negotiation side. If there's some people that just won't work out a deal, and maybe you've gotten rid of, I don't know, $50,000 worth of debt, but you have, 10 or 12 or $15,000 worth of holdouts, you always have the option, the backup plan of filing a Chapter 13 and resolving the rest of that debt.
Okay, so sometimes you do 2 things.
Sometimes
one
in the
after
appropriate
the other
circumstance.
Okay. Since if you negotiate on behalf of people, their debt down, their credit score is getting affected during that time because they're not paying their credit cards. You instruct them not to pay. And since filing for bankruptcy, their credit score is also affected down the drain. What's the advantage? What about dealing with creditors in the future? Obtaining a loan on a car or on a house. Are you better positioned if you did debt consolidation versus bankruptcy?
Not being a credit clearing expert myself, I have looked at many of these cases and spoken with people afterwards. The sense that I'm getting is that it has about the same effect on your credit score, whether it's a Chapter 7, a Chapter 13, or a debt negotiation. So that should not be the determining factor in picking one of those 3 options, because it's going to hurt your credit temporarily.
Now we know that if you also file for bankruptcy, it's going, other than credit cards that will send you invitations in the mail the first week you're discharged at usurious interest rates. However, we know that if you file for bankruptcy, you're not going to get a bank to give you a loan anytime soon, and you're not going to get a bank to mortgage your house, a house for you.
Yeah, it could take a few years after a bankruptcy to qualify for a mortgage.
What about debt renegotiation? The effect of that on a bank loan or a mortgage, is it any easier? Any faster?
I say it's not any faster or any slower. It's the fact that it happened, that the payments were delinquent for a period of time. So in much the same way that once you've filed a Chapter 7 bankruptcy or a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, and so long as you're not getting behind on anything else moving forward, your score will improve over time. In much the same way, once you get through the debt negotiation process and you've done a settlement and a release of the remaining debt, once you've kind of drawn a line under that and fixed it, so long as you're not getting behind on anything else moving forward, your score also will improve at roughly the same rate.
So what's the advantage of debt renegotiation versus filing bankruptcy?
Okay, here's an example. Like, so someone has some credit card debt, and their income is such that they don't qualify for a Chapter 7. But certain kinds of tax debt are not dischargeable in bankruptcy. But the types of tax debt that aren't dischargeable in bankruptcy have to get paid in full over the 3 to 5 years. I've seen people that just have a massive amount of tax debt, and if you had to take that and divide it over the maximum 60 months of a Chapter 13 plan, they wouldn't be able to make the plan payments. So there's sometimes a case where, okay, well, let's take the things that we can get rid of in debt negotiation, credit cards, medical bills, that sort of thing, resolve that. Once we've resolved that, then you can definitely approach the IRS and try to work out some kind of a payment arrangement or offer in compromise. Bankruptcy isn't the solution to everything.
And sometimes people come to you, they want to file Chapter 7, but they're not eligible to file Chapter 7. Give me an example of somebody who wants to file for Chapter 7, but is not eligible for Chapter 7 or Chapter 13.
Okay, so for an example is someone who doesn't qualify for a Chapter 7 is if you have too much equity in your house, because there's only so much equity you can protect in a Chapter 7.
So in that case, do you qualify for Chapter 13, or you may also not qualify for Chapter 13?
Well, you can qualify for a Chapter 13 provided that you're able to make Chapter 13 plan payments. But one of the interactions between the two is, so let's say you got $100,000 in equity, and that's way too much to protect in a Chapter 7. One of the rules in a Chapter 13 is you can't pay less to your unsecured creditors in a Chapter 13 than would be available in a Chapter 7. So if you were theoretically in a Chapter 7 and you were way over your equity, the trustee would take the house and sell it and pay off all the creditors. So there's cases where in a Chapter 13, because you have so much equity in the house, that affects how much that you'd have to pay back to your creditors.
Okay. Are there circumstances where somebody comes to us and says, I want to file Chapter 7, but they can't. I want to file Chapter 13, but I can't. So they are forced to do that negotiation because Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 are not an option.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So النقطة اللي بدنا نوصلها للمستمعين انه debt renegotiation اوقات بتحل محل Chapter 7 وبتغني الانسان من انه يقدم bankruptcy لحتى يترك تقديم البانكربسي لنهار اسود اكثر. وانما بالاضافة في حالات اشخاص بيجوا بدهم يقدموا Chapter 7 بس هن غير مؤهلين وبدهم يقدموا Chapter 13 وهن كمان غير مؤهلين، يعني حابين يقدموا bankruptcy بس غير مؤهلين يقدموا bankruptcy. ساعتها حلهم الوحيد لما يقام دعوة ضدهم ويصير في judgment ضدهم، حلهم الوحيد انه يعملوا debt renegotiation. debt renegotiation كمان طويلة، كمان بتخرب الكريدت سكور تبع الإنسان، كمان بتأثر على الإنسان قدرته إنه يرجع ياخد قروض من البنوك أو يعمل مورجج، وإنما أوقات هي الحل الوحيد لأنه هذا الشخص مش مؤهل للبانكربسي. وأوقات وقت نقدر نعمل debt renegotiation من الأفضل من إنه نقدم بانكربسي، لأنه بنترك البانكربسي لنهار أسود أكتر. مثل ما بيقول المحامي مايكل بانكستين إنه تقريبا 15% من الأشخاص اللي بيجوا لعنا اللي حاطين براسهم انه الحل الوحيد لهم هو البانكربسي، بنلاقي انه الحل الافضل لهم هو debt renegotiation. So sometimes you are forced to do that negotiation because you're not a candidate for bankruptcy.
Yeah, let's build up that last example. That last example is you got $100,000 in
equity. So you cannot do...
It's too much to be a Chapter 7.
Right.
Maybe based on your income and expenses, you wouldn't be able to pay that much to your unsecured creditors. I've absolutely had situations where, okay, we do a debt negotiation, resolve as much of the debt that you can, and then if there's any holdouts, let's say that, you've resolved $50,000 or $60,000 worth of debt and maybe you have $10,000 or $15,000 left. It's the holdouts that didn't get resolved in the debt negotiation. Now you go into a Chapter 13 100% plan, but it's 100% of the holdouts. So you spread that over, say, 60 months to make the payments as low as possible per month. So if you got $100,000,
60 months is 5 years. Remember,
exactly.
we don't want to overcomplicate it for our listeners.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I have to constantly fly a little closer to earth when I'm talking about these things.
Because it can be very confusing. The bottom line is that sometimes people want to file for bankruptcy, 7 or 13, but because of how much money they have or whatnot, they cannot, because even if we file, the bankruptcy trustee will dismiss the case. So filing for bankruptcy is you have to want it and you have to need it. That's the point here. للإنسان يقدم bankruptcy، دايما بنحكي عن الأشخاص اللي ما بدهم يقدموا bankruptcy لأنه بحسوا كأنه فشلوا إلى آخره، أو لأنه بفضلوا يزرقوا ولا نهار أسود. في الإنسان يكون عنده الرغبة يقدم، والنقطة الإضافية اللي هون عم نحاول نوصلها إنه بده يكون مؤهل ليقدم. مش كل إنسان طلع بباله يقدم بانكربسي ليتخلى عن ديونه بيقدر يقدم. بده يكون مؤهل لتشابتر 7، بده يكون مؤهل لتشابتر 13. دائما بنشوفها وحكينا عنها بالماضي إنه في عالم إذا قدموا تشابتر 7 وهن غير مؤهلين، البانكربسي تراستي he will move to dismiss the case. يعني بيطلب انه ينزت الكيس لانه هذا شخص غير مؤهل. يعني في عنا فئة من العالم عم بيحاربوا يقدموا bankruptcy، وفي عنا فئة من العالم حتى لو بدهم يقدموا bankruptcy غير مؤهلين، ساعة الحل الوحيد عندهم هو debt renegotiation. We have less than 4 minutes. Debt renegotiation, you said from the very beginning, it has, and it's a lengthy process, by the way. You said about 18 months. But are there any advantages when you have an option and when somebody is, eligible for debt negotiation, not Chapter 7? What are the advantages of debt renegotiation over bankruptcy?
Well, one I can think of is it's a voluntary process, so you could stop the process at any time. In a Chapter 7...
And go file for bankruptcy.
Correct. In a Chapter 7, for example. In a Chapter 7, once you're in a Chapter 7 and you're in the process, it's difficult to get out of a Chapter 7. Chapter 13 is not that case, though. In a Chapter 13, you have an absolute right to voluntarily dismiss your case at any stage in the proceedings, but that's not the case in a Chapter 7. But, with a debt negotiation, it's a voluntary negotiation. So if you decided you didn't want to do that, you could suspend the negotiations. It's a voluntary process, and nobody's forcing you to do anything.
And maybe by then, you are a candidate for Chapter 7 or Chapter 13.
It's possible. I've had someone start as a 7 and convert to a 13, or start as a 13 and convert to a 7.
Or start as a debt negotiation and convert into a Chapter 7.
Correct. This is a dynamic process based on what's going on in the